there's a lot of people that are here that are trying to, get their team better, but they already have a good team, but it might not be where they wish it were. And I said, well, it reminds me, every piano needs a tuning, and you can have an awesome piano that's in tune, but just because it's in tune doesn't mean that it's going to stay in tune indefinitely.
Welcome to the Everyday Practices Podcast. I'm Reagan Robertson, and my co-host, Dr. Chad Johnson, and I are on a mission to share the stories of everyday dentists who generate extraordinary results using practical, proven methods you can take right into your own dental practice. If you're ready to elevate patient care and produce results that are anything but ordinary, buckle up and listen in. Welcome to another episode of Everyday Practices. I am your host, Reagan Robertson, and I'm here today with my co-host, Dr. Chad Johnson, who's in practice today. How's it going, Chad?
Great. Done for the day, but it was one of those days where I'm just taking a big sigh and a deep breath because we just got off of our workshop a couple weekends ago with Productive Dentist Academy, and the whole team came. And so we are fired up, and so we're closing deals. We've got stuff going. I'm loving it. But yeah, there's a lot of loose ends and stuff like that to be taken care of to make sure that we're firing on all cylinders.
So you said to me right before we started this podcast, we've only been off the workshop for 2 weeks now.
Right.
And you've already seen an increase in your productivity and scheduling.
Yes. I'm not positive, like I'd have to look. I'd hate to stop right now, but to know quantitatively what that is, but qualitatively, I feel like we're about 30% up on.
Jeez.
Yeah. We're just hitting the goals that we should be hitting that we weren't before on some of the stats, and it just feels good to be closing the deal and having the associates talk stuff over with patients and be thinking, okay, if I were Dr. Bruce and I were telling this person, how can we be the best? How can this mouth be the best that it can be? Here's what I would do if you were family, that kind of stuff. And they might not even be using that diction, of verbiage. But as you know, the cool thing about Productive Dentist Academy, it's not about scripting, so that way we're robots. It's getting the general idea across.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so things are going good.
We got excited together, I know, at the workshop, and we always get fired up. The PDA team gets fired up. The doctors, the team gets fired up. And we wanted to record a couple of podcasts for listeners based on, what we took away. And one of those controlling ideas was every piano needs tuning. And that's based on something that you had said at the workshop.
Well, yeah, it just came to mind because so we promote a morning huddle. And a secondary issue is if you can't do it in the morning, fine, then do it the night before or something like that. Make it intentional that you're reviewing the schedule as a mini team or as a full team, however you want. Keep it quick, look stuff over, and be intentional about it. And Productive Dentist Academy team also has a morning huddle before the workshop. Mm-hmm. So they're a morning huddle I was participating in. And one of the things that was brought up was, there's a lot of people that are here that are trying to, get their team better, but they already have a good team, but it might not be where they wish it were. And I said, well, it reminds me, every piano needs a tuning. And you can have an awesome piano that's in tune, but just because it's in tune doesn't mean that it's going to stay in tune indefinitely, the rest of your life. So you have to have someone come out and, tune your piano. I don't even care if it's every 20 years or every year, or if you do it 4 times a year or something like that. But you have to have the piano tuned for it to be at its best sound. So it just reminded me of that. It also it reminds me of gardening, that just because you plant something doesn't mean you go, okay, so I'm good the next 10 years or the 20 years. It's like, it doesn't quite work that way. You have to cultivate your garden. You have to tend to it. You have to, and the same thing with the piano, just because it's tuned, it's not like, okay, we have arrived. We're done learning. It's like, well, maybe for a while, but you play that piano and it's going to get worn out. So at your office, when you're going at 100% capacity, after a while, just like your computer, just like any machine or anything like that, it starts to kind of need some oil change, and it kind of needs, some new brake fluid and all that stuff like that. So it needs updating, but that doesn't mean that the vehicle or your garden or the piano is bad. Or that you need to trash it. It's just like, no, it just needs some tending to. So that was my point. I don't know. It just kind of creatively came to mind that, it's like a piano being tuned, and it's okay.
Well, it made me go pretty introspective thinking about what that means, because there's two ways you can take it. I think I personally have never met any industry leader that does not have a personal development plan, ways to adapt and continue to educate themselves. And then the top performers carry that torch of learning, that learning mindset over to the team. But when I thought about being the piano needs tuning, I thought back to my own development and how many times do I go back on my own education? So getting all of the Donald Miller certifications that I have over the last year and a half, I have gone back and back and back, and I reread curriculum that I learned, that I got tested on and certified, but I just keep going back. And each time I do, what's really fascinating is I'll see something in a new way, or I'm reminded of something that maybe I've gone slack on. Maybe I'm skipping a step in framework as I'm working through problems, or, maybe there's something new that wasn't as important to me then, but is really relevant now. So just like a piano, it's still the same thing, but you need to go back and tighten yourself up again. And I like your garden, your garden metaphor, because you can't just leave it. It's not like suddenly in any profession, I don't think there's no profession that doesn't adapt and evolve over time. So you always have to have your eye on continuous improvement. And what are you doing to feed your continuous improvement? And then what are you doing? Like, that's the selfish place. Every person is mostly concerned about themselves and their own development. As leaders, what are we doing to empower our team to tune their own piano? How is that showing up in our core values? How is that showing up in how we show up as leaders to encourage that behavior in our team?
I don't know if other people know this in different parts of the country. It would be more prominent than others, but being in Iowa, a lot of times there's crop rotation where one year you don't plant the same. So in other words, just because you have bought 40 acres or 160 acres or 1,600 acres, whatever, you're not going to just plant the same corn seed every year the rest of your life. And so, sometimes you might switch in soybean, and sometimes, depending on the soil, you might add nitrogen, and as opposed to, and so you're trying out, you're kind of a chemist, scientist, that you're trying to figure out what is going to work best for the plants, and or which plant should we switch to? Is this expected to be a drier year? Is this expected? So you switch that kind of stuff up, and so you can't just assume that, 1 year you're going to always be planting the same seed. So buy 1 million of those seeds, plant it over the next 20 years, and it's just not going to work that way. Each year, the farmer is trying to decide, okay, should we switch? And if you drive down a country road that's got corn seed on it, or any different seeds, and again, I'm not an expert per se, but I think I realize that this, I think, is second nature for us. You'll see little signs that have different numbers that show like these few rows are with this seed, these few rows are with this seed, these few rows are with this seed, and they're testing out which seed in this soil works best and which one gives them the best yield. And so, they're working on, and then the next year, if they go, I'm predicting that this is going to be a drier year, or this year is going to be a late start in the season, so I need to plant a quicker seed. So we have to do the same thing as dentists and as business owners. We have to adapt to what's our situation right now, because it doesn't work from 5 years ago. If it does, good for you or something. It just doesn't for me.
Wow. Well, I mean, yeah, there's you took me down quite a bunny trail because there's
It
also
does.
soil protection. It's really kind of nerdy excitement, really, because I live in a farming community also. So we have, tulips are huge here in addition to the actual,
Yeah.
food that we produce in our county. But I know that they rotate. It's easy to see the tulip rotation. So there may be a field that's just getting a rest for that particular time, or in workout, muscle confusion.
Yeah.
Right? Your muscles get used to certain things. You have to switch it up a little bit. Sarah Hansen, one of our marketing consultants, she talks about marketing being like a marathon, training for a marathon, because she learned that you don't just hit the ground and run 10 miles every day. One day you might do intervals. So
Yeah.
you might, one day you might do sprints. One day you might do a longer run. It just depends. And it's all to prepare, all layers together to prepare you for the big race. And I would say that learning is the same way. So do you approach that, Chad? Like when you think about 2022, do you already have CE queued up in your head? Like, where you're going to focus?
I do.
And
people so people want to sell you stuff and they want to train you on that stuff. And I feel like there are two kinds of people. One type is the most common, and they're reluctant and resistant to wanting to adapt to the new technology or the new protocol, new system altogether.
right.
So when a salesman comes and says, "Hey, I can train you on this," the person says, "Nah." And if the salesman said, "Why?" "I just don't want to use that. I'd rather use what I'm using." I get that. Don't get me wrong. When I tell the salesman, "No, I don't know if now's a good time," they're like, "Oh, well, we can help hold your hand." And I'm like, I'm already implementing 4 things right now over the next 3 months. And I can only give my team so much at any given time. So I have things in the queue, in the docket, that I'm waiting to implement. And for example, the sleep apnea course that we went to,
That's right.
I just don't think it's going to be a good time for us until January. And if I purchased it right now, I also feel like next week they'd say, "Let's schedule a training time for you." And I'd be like, "Yeah, it's not going to happen until January at the earliest." And they'd be like, "Well, but you just bought it." And it's like, well, right. That's why I'm not going to buy it right now, is because I'm holding off on that. Or it might be sending the hygienists to a course or laser training or stuff like that. But yes, on my calendar that I have right off screen, but that the audio people won't obviously be able to hear. But one of the things on the PDA One Tribe 2022 calendar is off on the left side. It says, "Visualize your celebrations." And what do you have upcoming that you would like to do, and what CE would you like to attend? Like basically, what's your wish list, and let's find a way to make that happen. And for example, it took me forever to get to COIS, and then after 15 years, I finally pulled the trigger on that, and I'm so glad I did.
Is that for you, or is that for you and your team? That calendar that you put?
I have to say it's mostly for me because of our management style. The management system that we're using. I also have the leadership team helping me, figure out what do you think we can tackle at any given time. But I have a pretty good pulse on it. And it's self-serving. I don't want to give them so much that we fail and we're frustrated with growth.
Well, one thing that you do that I've noticed consistently is as you get new team, or even if you don't have new team, I know that you are pretty passionate about getting your entire team to PDA workshops.
Yeah.
So what is it about, what type of what do you look for in recurring? I would call that repeatable CE, because some elements are the same and some elements are different at each PDA workshop, but the bulk of it, kind of remains steady, the foundational elements. Why do you reinvest in that?
Sure. I think it also harkens to the idea of the AGD or the ADA or any of these organizations where you go to an annual meeting and they recap on, like you can go to a course that you've taken before by the same guy, but he's giving his latest spiel. So I was trained originally, for example, on implants in 2005. 10 years later, 2015-ish, I took Dr. Garg's implant course. And I had some doctors at lunchtime and dinner time, they're like, "But you already place implants. Why are you like spending so much money coming to learn implants from him? Like you're taking the basic course. Why aren't you taking the master course?" And I said, "I'll be taking that next." But the way I look at it, there's got to be something new. Well, sure enough, there was. And so they're taking notes on, okay, 1200 RPM, and then go down to 10 millimeters, and then, make sure your angle. They're looking at the technical. I was looking at it going, oh, that's so cool. Okay, so he really is just, so I'm looking, like, I was just looking at a qualitative level different the second time. And so with Productive Dentist Academy, as an example, when I bring the team there, I'm really trying to, the first time it just blew my mind. And now I'm starting to get more comfortable with it. And I think that's part of the idea of mastership, is that you have a recurring education that you're doing, to not just be able to do it to the standard of 1970, but to be able to then do it to the standard of 1990. And then at some point, 1990 is old school and you need to learn the newer standard. That's not true with everything.
Right.
I'm sure laying bricks is probably pretty, like the same it was 500 years ago. There might be, something, but by and large, that there's maybe
you've
some
just
industries.
Triggered the entire brick industry, right?
I know.
They're gonna start sending you like all the changes in cement and all the different advances that they have in the materials.
I'm sure they're there, but it would be something that we could appreciate, that it's just like, I'm sure on a cursory level that it hasn't changed much, but we understand in dentistry, a lot has changed. And I do plan on going back to the GARG course again. When I was there, I was like, man, I probably should go to this every 10 years just to catch up.
Well, that's you just really surprised me, because I think I have a relatable, for not being a dentist, a very relatable way that I've approached education. And when I was in college, yes, I was a journalist in high school. Then I was a journalist in college as well. I loved writing. I learned the different styles of writing. I learned sales copy. I learned all the different elements. And then when I went into the story brand through Donald Miller, you were the one that sent me a book,
yes,
building a story brand, and said, look into this. And what I loved about it was a different way of looking at something that I was already fairly proficient in. Yeah. And if you do not approach it with the mindset of, I could learn something new, I think you miss gigantic opportunities to expand, adapt, grow, evolve, all of the big words. And so going in through that program, it made me more efficient in how I write. So I write even faster now than ever before. It helped me get to the heart of the matter, the problems quicker. So now all of the content that I write is put together more efficiently, faster, and it's more effective. So it's more efficient and it's more effective. So I've actually I've done a hack, and I'm more productive as a result.
Think about this writing style. You used to put period, space,
yes,
capital letter for them, and then with computers they actually did away with that.
They did.
So it's period, space, and for the longest time, it drove me nuts. And like, I really had to train myself. But if you 20 years ago said, no, I'm educated in English, it's like, well, that's true for now. But the weirdest thing is it would totally change. No one in 1997 would say, hey, can you Google that for me? No one would even know what you're talking about. So you've just got to keep up with it. So what's cool is I might still be the same, but my team isn't, and it's changed over time. And so just like how a river can, change course and stuff like that, and you have to remap it. And it's important for engineers to remap it, that we have to engineer our team to calibrate them better. And, some people come and go. And so you've got to make sure that everyone's on the same page and let them have those same aha experiences. So actually this a couple of weeks ago was my fourth generation of taking the whole team. And myself, I think, I might have been to Productive Dentist Academy Workshop, like, let's say 12 times. It might be something like that, that it's, and I love every time. And it might even just be the conversations out in the hallway with Mike Greer.
Right.
Or, stuff like that. So there's different guys and gals that have been so fun to stay in touch with, and they shoot me a text, like, hey, how you doing? I just think it's so cool that Devin Giron down in New Mexico, like he'll send me a shout out and be like, hey man, how are you doing? And I actually really feel like he cares. It's so rare, because I'm just flabbergasted that he writes me like that. It's awfully caring. And who does the same with that? Dave Deal,
Ron
Miller, And a lot of those guys are, Ryan Oakley sends me, I'm just name dropping everyone here, but
I know.
like they all do. They'll write and say, hey, what do you think about this new HIPAA law? What do you, or like, how are the kids doing in school? Just stuff like that. And it's not every day. It's not like a burden. It's just kind of cool that occasionally they check in.
It's birds of a feather. It is definitely birds of a feather. I think you get addicted to making sure that your piano is tuned as a leader and tuned as a clinician, and you end up attracting those around you. And definitely, I love the names that you dropped, because the names you dropped, they are all similarly attuned in their own leadership styles. So they run towards evolving. They run towards, and not necessarily early adoption. I think timing is a really big sign, like you said, of excellent leadership. So you can do all the things, but understanding if the timing is right for you and your team is really important. Because you have to balance it with going back and looking at things that you already know, and then mixing in the new as you go forward.
So this is so cool of an idea, like with tuning the piano. About 3 years ago, our piano was out of tune. It was the one that I had played growing up. No lie, I think we had never tuned the piano the whole time I grew up. Not once. It didn't even matter to me. I took piano lessons, this and that, and would play it and stuff. So I thought, you know what, we should reach out and get a guy to tune. And it really wasn't all that much cost. But before that, about a month before, I thought to myself, what if I tuned it myself? Now, keep in mind, this analogy is, what if I tuned my own practice?
Yes.
So I'm just trying to throw that out there. If people are like, where are you going with this? It has to do with tuning your own office. You can tune your own office. I went on to YouTube and I looked up how to tune your own piano. And because I thought, okay, listen, it's out of tune.
Oh boy.
If I tune it, and there's two problems that I'll run across. I'll break a string, or it'll be out of tune. Well, it's already out of tune. Who cares? So let's just give it a shot.
Right.
So I Amazoned some of the little tools to do it. And I downloaded a software onto my computer to and I set up my podcast microphone.
You really did this?
Yes. And I tried tuning it myself. And it was super hard. And I learned a lot of really cool lessons. Into, but I really, because I was curious, and that curious spirit, is advantageous. But I thought, well, you know what? So I finally had the guy tune it, and it was so impressive that I could appreciate the difficulty of it. So if you're in your own practice and you want to tune it yourself, go for it. But the fact is, someone that tunes it like a professional tuner is going to be quicker, more efficient, and it's going to sound better. Listen, I've played music for 30 some years, just over 30 years. And I can tune stuff. I can tune a guitar. I can, I know how to tune stuff. So it's not like I'm stupid at that. And yet still, I learned how hard it was to tune your own piano. So having a coach to help you do that, having a workshop to do that, to help facilitate you achieving your goals. My goal was to have a C, a middle C at 440 Hertz, that was my goal. I want it there. And the other stuff, I just want to have the coaches help me figure out in my practice how to get there more efficiently. We only have so many years.
Well, I was just you tied a bow on that one right there. I think there's a lot of time that gets wasted with trying to do things on your own, and it can turn into years of trying to figure out things on your own, because you're capable, but it points to your topic of mastership. And so what in your specific equation, where is your time best spent? Is it best spent spending several hours trying to figure out how you can tune it so that you can maybe tune it to the point where you get it where you want it to be, and spend how many hours? Or do you want to go play with your kids and bring someone in for, an eighth of the cost and take care of it that way?
Well, really the first few years, after a while, because I've been with Productive Dentist Academy for 7 years now, is, in November, I think it'll be 7 years. And when we first started, I think my practice was growing by 200,000 a year with Productive Dentist Academy. And so, I mean, that makes it worth it. I know, not all results are the same, blah, blah, blah. But, to be able to have that kind of growth
That's a little under average, Chad, but that's good.
I know. Wah, wah. Yeah. What is average?
275, I think.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, you know what? If I'm under average with Ryan Oakley and Ron Miller, I'll take it.
This is so going to get under your craw now, isn't it?
No.
Okay.
No. I'm completely satisfied with my own race there. Yep.
Oh, I think you're phenomenal. I mean, you're phenomenal. Well, thank you. I think we just got some good pearls. Timing, take a look at yourself, including your team. Maybe
tune your own piano, but maybe get someone to help. But get your piano tuned. There's occasional time to tune the piano.
Yeah, I have a group of marketers that I exclusively hang out with, and that is our goal is we bounce ideas off of each other. We look for each other's blind spots, and it just propels us forward so much faster. So I think the peer element is a lot to say for it too. So there's the mastership, bringing in the coach, super important. I've had coaches over the years, swear by it. And then there's the peer element too.
Yeah. I don't know what I was thinking, but when I said the 440 hertz, that's the A, the middle C is 256. I didn't want any purists thinking this guy didn't know how to tune his own piano. So if you're listening, 256, you get over yourself. All right. Well, that's it. Reagan, thanks for letting me ramble about corn crops and, tuning a piano and
how are you tuning your piano? Listeners,
That's
how
right.
are you tuning your piano? Thanks for checking us out, guys. We'll see you next week.
See you next week.
Thank you for listening to another episode of Everyday Practices Podcast. Chad and I are here every week thanks to our community of listeners just like you, and we'd love your help. It would mean the world if you can help spread the word by sharing this episode with a fellow dentist and leave us a review on iTunes or Spotify. Do you have an extraordinary story you'd like to share or feedback on how we can make this podcast even more awesome? Drop us an email at podcast@productivedentist.com. And don't forget to check out our other podcasts from Productive Dentist Academy at productivedentist.com/podcasts. See you next week.